June 9th meeting of the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. I am Delegate Carol Krim, the House Chair. With me is Senator Clarence Lamb, the Senate Chair. Welcome to all committee members, presenters, staff, and members of the public. We have two major presentations today. The first is a presentation from the Audit Compliance Unit at the Department of Budget and Management. We will entertain questions after this presentation. Our second presentation is a follow-up to the Social Services SSA, Social Services Administration audit presented a few months ago. Secretary Padilla will present the department's efforts to address the findings of the June audit. My opening remarks are the JAEC, the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee, is very concerned about resolving the findings from the SSA audit. But our concerns go beyond just the SSA audit. We are looking for accountability and a resolution for audit findings across the many state agencies. Senator Lamb, I'd like to call on you if you have some opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to kind of echo the concern that Chairman Krim cited as well, and also recognize the fact that we as a committee are paying attention to repeat audit findings. And I think we have a concern in making sure that government functions as efficiently and as effectively as possible. And some of these repeat findings that we see come up from agencies continuously do present concerns to us when it comes to the best functioning ability of our state government. And so we, as part of the hearing today, also have some folks who can speak to this, both from DBM and also to obviously address the findings that we found in DHS as well. So we look forward to this discussion hearing today. Back to you, Delegate.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb. So I'd like to welcome Secretary Brinkley. We're so honored to have you here today, Mr. Secretary. And part of our of the presentation from DBM is the presentation from the Audit Compliance Unit, and the manager, Ms. Joan Peacock. Now, I don't know how you two want to handle this, Secretary. If you want to say some opening remarks and then hand it over to her, that's fine. Whatever you choose.
That's exactly what I plan to do, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Initially, when this was set up, I was informed that it was just to have our staff make a presentation. Yesterday, we had a change requested that I be here too, and we tried to move some things around so that I can. I will be leaving here at the conclusion of the DBM presentation when Joan finishes, because I have a meeting at 2 o'clock with the governor. We have a cabinet meeting this afternoon. You all have some other meetings, and prior to this, I had 4 budget hearings here in the office. So it just happened that we had 1 o'clock to be able to allow this to happen. So it's great to be here, Madam Chair, Senator Chair. I don't know if I call you Dr. Chair or exactly how to address him in that role, but Senator Lamb, it's good to be here, and also the rest of the members of the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. I'm David Brinkley, the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. And what I'm pleased to do is to introduce Joan Peacock. Joan is the manager, as Chairman referenced, of the Audit Compliance Unit here at DBM. She's done a phenomenal job. You will see a 14-page slide presentation. Joan and I spoke on the phone, about 45 minutes ago, and I told her, I said, well, Joan, I've looked through this thing, and you might be a little too far in the weeds on some of the operational on this thing. Try to keep it at the high level. And if you all see something that you want to then ask her about, but I wanted to make sure that you had plenty of time to also deal, with the agency behind us and Secretary Padilla. And so I'm going to turn it over to Joan. Let me tell you, she was here when I came in as secretary. We kept her going. She runs a phenomenal team. It's a small team, but they are a very potent team. And I think she'll be able to run into the high level of what we've asked her to do and how I think they do it very well, particularly from trying to assist agencies in dealing with whatever audit findings they have. And then particularly when there are problems that are identified, how they can dive into them. And Joan, you might just touch base when you get into it, because I don't think I saw it in your comments, some of the other agencies you've been dealing with, because she deals with all the large agencies and some of the challenges there. So let me just turn it over to Joan and Madam Chair, Senator Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And I'll just sit in the background on mute, watch this until if this does go on longer, I'll be leaving at 1:45 so I can head over to my meeting with the governor as we discuss the capital budget.
So, Mr. Secretary, I would request that you stay as long as you possibly can, because we may have some questions for you.
Understood. Understood. And Madam Chair, I think you reached out to me on September 24th. That's when I had my first indication that you all had some challenges going. She sent me an urgent text. We spoke on the phone, and I think this meeting is the follow-up meeting to that. So, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary. Ms. Peacock, could you start, please? Thank you.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Lamb, Chairman Krim, and the members of the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come here today to present to the committee the work that our DVM Audit Compliance Unit does. As Secretary Brinkley mentioned, I tried to shorten the presentation, and I know time is of the essence because we would like to have him be available for questions afterwards. So hopefully I'm going to keep this under 10 minutes. Thank you, Secretary Brinkley, for the introduction, and thank you for the support of our unit and the work that we do. It's because of your support we have been able to be so effective and successful. So I just want to recognize Secretary Brinkley for all that he does for all of DVM, actually, and for the state as well. With me today, I do have Jim Kopp and Clarence Trainum, who are the audit compliance analysts, along with myself, that make up our team. So it is a very small team. Can we move to the first slide, please? So DVM's Audit Compliance Unit was established because of language added in statute back in 2006 that directed the governor to implement a process to monitor the efforts of agencies to correct legislative audit findings. We work with agencies on selected critical audits to provide an objective assessment of their corrective actions and to assist them by monitoring their progress and maintaining focus on implementing these actions. This is the primary work that our unit does. Over the years, we have, however, expanded our efforts to include some other activities that we believe are proactive to assist agencies. These additional efforts that we've implemented are to help prevent audit findings or to help agencies understand what corrective actions may be necessary to fix audit issues as soon as they are identified. At this point, I really do want to point out that ultimately, however, it is up to each agency to implement any corrective actions and to continue to enforce those actions to ensure that they do not have repeat findings. There's no amount of monitoring that can be effective if the agency management does not take action. If an agency does not accept our suggestions or recommendations, or if they change procedures they've put in place after they've been implemented, those could result in seeing repeat findings occur. Next slide. The ACU currently has 6 main responsibilities. First and foremost, we assist agencies with the OLA audit resolution, follow-up, and monitoring of corrective actions. Then we also do provide ad hoc audit and consultative support. We administer the Maryland Internal Audit Forum and the Chief Internal Auditor Roundtable. We provide procurement-related tasks, and we fulfill DVM's internal audit compliance function. Next slide, please. We reach out and work directly with executive branch agencies that have 4 or more repeat findings. We have established this threshold or criteria to make sure we can provide effective assistance. As Secretary Brinkley mentioned, I don't have listed in here, but we've worked with agencies from the Health Department, from Human Services. MHEC, we currently are working with MHEC. I know you guys just had a hearing with them a couple months ago. We've worked with elections, agencies across the board, large and a few small ones that have had significant repeat findings. When we work with these agencies, we initially establish and develop an approach that is tailored to each agency so that we can be most effective. It's not a cookie cutter approach, but one that is specifically discussed and developed with each agency during our kickoff and entrance meeting. When working with agencies, we perform the following tasks. We provide advice and support in developing corrective actions for all of the OLA findings, with concentration on the repeat and significant findings. We monitor progress in implementing those agreed upon corrective actions until OLA returns. And once corrective actions are fully implemented, we perform audit tests to determine whether the action appears to address the root cause of the audit finding, and whether the corrective actions are performed and adhered to on a consistent basis. We regularly update agency management of our assessments and the results of our testing performed through periodic meetings, emails, and phone calls. Next slide, please. We begin working with an agency after their audit is published unless they have reached out to us in advance. For SSA, for example, we reached out to them once their audit was published, and we began working with them, hitting the ground running in July. We start working with agencies by looking at OLA's work papers, and we do this to thoroughly understand each of the findings so we can better advise the agencies. We may also follow up with OLA if we need to obtain better clarification or if there is any agency disagreement noted in the audit. When working with the agencies, we schedule periodic meetings to review and discuss the corrective actions, and these periodic check-ins serve as a valuable tool to make sure focus remains on the corrective action implementation. They are scheduled based upon the significance or critical nature of the agency findings and the status of the corrective actions. We give more focus and attention to audit areas that are critical or more significant. For example, due to the nature of SSA's findings, we are working aggressively with them. We have 2 standing weekly meetings with agency management and staff. In other agencies, we may meet less frequently than months. So, like, for example, we might only meet monthly. In addition to these periodic meetings, we meet with agency staff to discuss and understand their programs, their processes, and the procedures related to the audit findings. We also talk to them to make sure we understand how the corrective actions are being implemented and how they will correct the issues. Our unique position in working with agencies while they're implementing their corrective actions provides an objective assessment that helps the agency more quickly see whether their corrective actions are being effective. During this process, we provide guidance and recommendations for improvements. During our work, we may also contact other agencies for assistance and collaboration. For example, we might reach out to DBM's Office of Budget Analysis or Office of Personnel to do it, or to DGS to provide technical insight, assistance, and suggestions. We also may contact other agencies to share best practices to correct issues. As mentioned before, when the corrective actions are fully implemented, we conduct sample tests to ensure their effectiveness. And depending on timing and when OLA is returning, we may repeat these tests periodically. So regardless of whether the corrective actions have been all implemented or not, our work continues with the agencies until OLA returns for their next fiscal compliance audit. At this point, I definitely think I need to give a shout out to Greg and his team at the Legislative Audits for their cooperation and assistance with the work that we perform with monitoring and follow up on the agency corrective actions. The OLA staff is always extremely helpful and willing to discuss issues so that we can better assist the agencies. Without this cooperation and assistance, our unit really could not be as effective as they are. Next slide. So I understood from the staff that the agency was, the committee members were interested in why repeat findings occur. These items listed here are based upon our experiences in working with the agencies over the years, and they are offered as a matter of opinion and observation. They are not intended as justifications or excuses. They are just reasons why repeat findings may happen even when an agency has been trying to implement corrective actions. I can go through and provide more detail and information on each of these areas if any of the committee members are interested. I know our main goal, though, is on what we can do to prevent and correct audit findings. It may be, in looking at this and thinking about it and talking with my staff, it may be worthwhile for us to investigate why repeat findings occur. And then when identifying systemic issues, maybe discussing what we could do to come up to combat those systemic issues that prevent, I guess, findings from being corrected. Next slide. Besides directly working with certain agencies on their specific audits and their related corrective actions, we developed other efforts with the objective to provide proactive guidance to agencies. This is either to potentially avoid audit findings, as well as to provide suggested corrective actions when they're needed. We offer ad hoc audit and internal control advisory services. There's many agencies that we've worked with in the past, or that we know because of the audit form or training that we've provided, that often reach out to us for guidance. In the past, there has also been instances when the legislative auditors have suggested an agency work with us to assist them with their corrective actions or to understand OLA's position related to an audit finding. We always welcome the opportunity to work with any agency that reaches out to us.
Could I interrupt you for just a minute?
Yes.
Our staff has asked me to ask you not to use acronyms. Because
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
we do have the public does watch our meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Whoops, sorry. And we also, I guess I'll just pick up where I left off. And we do have some acronyms in here, and I guess we have, let me just also explain, because I'm not going to go, I didn't intend to go in detail. The SOC audits are audits that are done to, when we have contractors that provide services for us, and we want to do, we need to have them have done a independent security assessment on them. That's what the SOC audit stands for. Again, I'm not planning to go into details of what that is, or any more details related to that. Sorry. Okay. And upon requested, we will perform special audits or reviews, and we may also provide technical guidance on reviewing those SOC reports. Next slide. In 2008, we established and organized the Internal Auditor Forum. This was new in the state. We have never previously, prior to this, gathered all the internal audit offices and functions within the state agencies. The objective of this is to promote information exchange and collaboration among the agency auditors and provide regular training. I'm happy to say that we have a majority of representation from many state agencies. We've also invited those that do not have internal audit functions to send a representative to our sessions that we hold regularly. Legislative auditors have also been in attendance at these meetings, and I am grateful that they've been also willing to present topics. Next slide, please. Here's an example of some of the forum topics that we've presented in the past. Next slide, please. We also began a couple years ago, several years ago, gathering the chief internal auditors. The objective of this was to share experiences, best practices, to discuss challenges, and to identify desired training topics for audit staff. below, you can see, or in this slide, you can see areas that we've talked about during these roundtable sessions. And again, I'd like to mention that we try to, even though every agency does not have an internal audit function, we still invite representatives from those agencies as well to participate in this roundtable discussion. Next slide, please. To be proactive again, our unit has decided to take on some procurement related tasks. They're listed here. Next slide. And then we also serve as DBM's internal compliance audit function. Next slide. And finally, this is our contact information for the members of our team. We are always happy to answer questions. And we're happy for anyone to reach out to us if they need assistance or guidance. I think that's my last slide. So if you have any questions now from any of the committee members, I'm willing to take them. And is Secretary Brinkley still here?
Yes, he is there. So I will start, and I'm sure my co-chair, Chairman Lamb, also has some questions, but I'll start with when this unit was put together under the 2006 odd law, I believe. Yes. There were 10 positions in this unit, and now you're down to 3. So could you explain how you're getting all your work done? And I'm not questioning whether you get your work done. I'm just saying, how are you able to do it when you started out with 10 and now you have 3?
So I was here at the beginning, so I can speak to that. So when the bill, I guess, was introduced, they did put 10 positions in. We never actually filled all 10 positions, unfortunately. And I think from the get-go, immediately we only had, it was myself and two others, as it stands today. At some point, and I don't remember, I have to go back and look at the history, we were able to add a third audit compliance analyst. I think there was actually at some point, we had, and I will say, I'm trying to remember now, I apologize, but we started out, I guess, with audits that had 5 or more repeats. And then we dropped it down to 4. We were able to add an additional analyst. So it was 4 of us total. And the audits were actually increasing that met that threshold. So that additional person was helpful to keep up with that. That person did move on to a different position, and we currently have not been able to fill that position yet. Because we did start with the same number that we have today, at the time, we did meet with the legislative auditors. We meet with, I apologize, I don't remember the legislators that introduced that bill, but we did meet with them to go over what the process we intended to put in place to make sure they were comfortable with it and agreed with it. And that's, again, how we keep up is we had to develop a certain threshold of which audits we could look at, just because it would be too much to tackle every audit finding.
I have one more question. I'm sure Senator Lamb, and then I have committee members that have questions. So on the page where you say reasons why repeat findings occur, the first 2 have to do with staff limitations, staff turnover. So do you ever recommend, or do you ever discuss this with the secretary, that more staffing is needed in certain agencies to help with these audit findings? Thank you.
So yes, I mean that when we're working with the agencies, the corrective action needs more staffing, we will, and we work with them to come up with the solution that is feasible for their agency. If staffing is part of that solution, that's, I think I mentioned, we'll work with DBM, Office of Budget Analysis. We will bring in our, because we were at DBM, I'll reach out to OBA, or I'm sorry, Office of Budget Analysis, and talk to the budget analyst that's related to that agency. And we'll talk about the audit finding, what the need is, and make sure that becomes part of the budget discussions. Well, I guess I don't make sure that happens. I think Secretary Brinkley will make sure that becomes part of the budget discussions. I'm not involved in that process, so I don't know how that ultimately plays out. But sometimes it might be that they end up shifting staff around instead of new pins and that type of thing.
Ms. Secretary, did you want to comment on that? No.
Looking for the unmute button.
Okay.
Yeah, frequently when we have these conversations, and in fact, I have a meeting, I think at 4 o'clock today with the cabinet. Our conversations around when they come in and say, we need some new positions. Okay, well, how many vacant positions do you have? And what is your vacant threshold? Well, we're budgeted for 5%, 6%, 7%, whatever it is, but we have 14% vacancy. Well, the simple answer, rather than add a new position, which takes effect July 1 when the budget's submitted, why don't you reclassify one of the vacant positions that you already have? Therefore, you can have it up and going now. It might be a matter of 3 weeks or 4 weeks for the reclassification to take place through Cindy's shop. And that has been the remedy to try to move forward. The other thing that you see with Joan's presentations, originally their threshold was 5 repeat findings or more. They've now lowered that to 4 so that they can become more responsive on it. But I think part of what was the connection on that is she initiates this roundtable with all agencies and their audit people. They can hear war stories, they can hear what's going on, so they can share remedies to what's going on. The mission there is to try to bring some of these down or offer solutions or ideas from outside. And so that's been part of the mission, is to get those numbers down. Now, that's not to say that when you do have some, they aren't very serious, which I know is what you're focused on and what we also are focused on. But Delegate, to get to the thrust of it is, adding a new position is not always the solution, particularly when they have vacant positions and they can reclassify and get someone in there to take care of what needs to be done. Now, training might be a different issue, where you have people that are in there that then need to be trained. And that's part of what Joan's work has been on, is by training other auditors and other agencies to know exactly what's going on there. So that's been the quickest solution that we can find. We do get turnover. And we are certainly very cognizant of that and focused on that. We're also cognizant, as you all are, because of what's happened with the pandemic lately, that a lot of people can get a lot of work done with technology now. We have technology now that we can share information and communicate and get things done that we didn't have in 2006 or 2008, whenever the legislation was passed. But again, that does not minimize any of the effects of any adverse audit findings.
Thank you, Ms. Secretary. Senator Lamb, Chairman Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to I guess advance that line of questioning a little bit further. So, I think it's I think not coincidental that in Ms. Peacock's presentation, the first reason that repeat findings occur is really staff limitations, and I'm trying to understand how that aligns with what the Secretary just mentioned too, when it comes to the fact that you can simply just kind of switch roles around and be able to fill positions. Because we also hear that sometimes agencies and departments are given instructions not to fill certain positions, to keep certain number of positions vacant. And on the other hand, we also hear from agencies, and I've served on House Appropriations before and have seen agencies come before us where they don't cite the fact that that they are understaffed, and so I'm trying to understand how that jives with staff limitations on one hand being presented as one of the one of the highest ranking reasons why we're seeing repeat findings, with the fact that we hear that sometimes agencies are being told not to fill all of their positions. And then secretaries and other department leaders are coming in and identifying the fact that they don't need additional pins. And it just seems to not be in alignment there with that response. And so I'd like to see, Mr. Secretary, what you have to say about that.
Well, Senator, it's pretty simple. If you have vacant positions, which many of them do, and many of them have quite a few vacant positions, and much more streamlined is to repurpose the classification. The MS-22 is the form that identifies what that position is supposed to be doing. And then it's much more expeditious. When we're having conversations now about positions and PINs, they wouldn't go into effect until July 1. Then you go through the hiring process. When something, not if, when something is deemed that critical and they have some vacant positions, then they can have it reclassified so that they can go through the hiring process right away. But also in many other instances, there are positions out there that are also no longer needed or deemed obsolete, whatever the role might be, that there could be a retraining or a repurposing for that individual. We haven't let warm bodies go when some things have been, deemed that we haven't needed that or something along those lines. And that seems to be the more readily solution, because then it can happen sooner. You can get a person in a position October 1 instead of having to wait till July 1 and then hire them, maybe not till August 1st.
Are departments ever instructed not to fill all of their vacant positions?
No, they're not instructed that. In fact, that's why we have a baked-in threshold based on turnover or whatever there might be. When we have hiring freezes, which hiring freezes go into effect when there's an economic crisis, perhaps, that would be the screening mechanism that says you can't get someone in, you might have somebody available. But then those are applied across the board. We had that effect last year. To have a hiring freeze lifted, they have to go through the analyst to make sure that there's the sufficient funds to bring somebody in. Let's say there had been some reductions to that agency budget, like we did last year with Board of Public Works meetings. But at that point in time, now hiring freezes are for the most part lifted. They are still technically in place, so they can be implemented if needed. But particularly when we have critical positions, get them in. We're not having the conversation here about DPSCS or Department of Corrections, but we have been adamant about trying to recruit correctional officers there. We have seen the current secretary seems to have crossed a bridge where he's having some much more success on recruiting and all that. But we're still trying to get people through so that we can train them and have qualified individuals do what they do. It's not necessarily that simple that you just go to the street and bring a body in. They then have to go through a training or a screening process or something along those lines. Hiring freezes are the thing that you might be hearing from, but that's not the case now.
Okay, I have one final question, then I'll turn it over to some of my colleagues too. That we had the Department of Legislative Services and OLA look back at repeat findings back to 1996. And I think the high mark when we were looking at repeat findings was 45% around 2006. And then we saw a low of 21% of repeat findings back in 2013. And now when we look at these numbers, they're approaching almost 30% again here in 2021. And so if the concern is with staff limitations and your suggestion is for these departments to be able to repurpose PINs or vacant positions to be able to address staff limitations, why is it that we're seeing the numbers creep back upwards when it comes to repeat findings? If that's a readily accessible tool to departments to address this through staff limitations, why are the numbers creeping back up?
Well, your premise, Mr. Chairman, is that the reasons for that are the first two. If you will look at numbers 3 and 4, they deal with outdated legacy systems. I know that in my department, specifically CCU, Central Collections Unit, I have had repeat findings, because when I see a repeat finding come from anywhere in DBM, I want to know what the hell's going on and why we had this. And in that instance, in particular, all of our repeat findings have been based on legacy systems that are no longer either maintained by their original manufacturers or that we've already started a procurement from an IT perspective to replace all of those. You've heard of MD Think, that's ongoing with some of those. Our CCU collection system is vastly outdated. We've just got a new online one going along those ways. Joan, what were the others beyond that? Because the first two that you're referencing that I get that you're focusing on are not the sole reasons for the vast majority of these. And then when we have these legacy systems, yeah, they do tick back up. What were the rest of them on that cheat sheet?
Well, we have that those were the timing. Sometimes it takes long, sometimes in the overload, there's new regulatory and other programs agencies have to implement. We mentioned COVID. That's probably going to see an increase maybe in the future. I also just wanted to mention with the staff, I think, and I will say, one of the things, it's not just needing resources. I think there has been, I want to say, we've seen a lot of high turnover and in key positions. And I think sometimes what we've seen happen, if we come into an agency, we see it's a repeat finding, might have put something in place. There was turnover, that person left, and then nobody picked up the corrective action. So it's not staying on the radar of the agency once it's fixed sometimes. I think also we have situations where, and I think I've seen this more recently, or our staff, my staff and I have seen it more recently, where the agency in their corrective action plan, they have a great plan, but it's very detailed and in depth and takes maybe a full person's to implement that. And that person's already doing A, B, and C, and they give that to that person, and then they really can't accomplish it. And so some of the agencies that we're working with that have done that, we said, this is a great plan, but all of this is probably not necessary to actually fix the finding. Let's look at what we actually need to put in place and what staff we can use. Don't just pick the obvious staff, pick the staff that, or the group of staff that we can use to implement this. I think sometimes it's forgotten what other responsibilities a staff person has when they're given corrective actions. So it's a little bit more than just needing new resources when we look at staff limitations and agency turnover and restructuring. So I just wanted to add that part of it as well.
So let me just say this, and I'll turn to my colleagues here. I don't think the things that we see on this slide, except for the last bullet of COVID-19, are anything new. That they're legacy systems that need updating or that are outdated, even when there were legacy systems back in 2006 and in 1996 that back then also needed updating. And so, it seems like these are not necessarily new issues except for COVID-19, and yet we are seeing some numbers fluctuate here. And I want to point out that, this is not meant to denigrate the work that Ms. Peacock, you and your small but mighty office is going through to try to address some of these repeat findings. I think we're just trying to help facilitate, serve, and help, and identify needs if there's also need within your office to help address some of these concerns. So this is, we appreciate the work that you do, and this is not meant to, impinge on that in any way.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not taking it in any regard like that, because they're doing phenomenal work. But until she gets the opportunity to share some of what's going on, no one can really know. This was, Joan, you haven't heard me say this, but she was a pleasant surprise when I came over here as secretary to find out they had this little powerhouse of a unit that was able to go back and forth, but more importantly, to share information with what other agencies have found so that they could then be implemented. I'm very proud of the work that they've done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to call on Delegate Ahrens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Brinkley, thank you for being here. And Joan, I appreciate the work you're doing. In light of what you all are talking about, one of the biggest problems we have is this staffing issue. Is there anything legislatively we can do? Like when we see a bill that gets passed and it gets enacted, is there something we can do? Because sometimes these bills come in with no appreciable effect on staffing, can do it with current amount. Is there anything we can do to help you with that department to say that department has to come in and explain that circumstance, why they can't move forward with that bill at this moment, because we're maybe not gauging how much help we really need, and we're not finding people to work currently. Is there something that this circumstance today in the General Assembly we could put into effect to help you with a new bill that we come out with that's going to put more pressure on an existing problem we have in an agency?
Joan, I'll step in because I think he's going down to a policy question.
Yes, thank
That's
you.
not really in her stable, and all I can say is when you all read, because when I was in the legislature, when we read fiscal notes, there's a line in there that asks about the impact on small businesses. We have some other impact notes in there. There could be some conversation along those lines, but for the most part, I believe that DLS and the analysts do a great job of examining what's going on. But just keep in mind that there's nothing static. Roles change, responsibilities change, and this is where you get people in agencies to do management to try to adapt their organizations to whatever the changing needs that are going forward. When this law was passed in 2008, look, when I came into the legislature in 1995, look how much has changed since then. Just to put it in perspective, especially for the younger ones here, because I do sound like the old man now talking. But when I came into the House of Delegates, Addie, you're laughing too hard. But when I came into the House of Delegates, we didn't have a computer, a PC or anything. And I brought one from home. We still had IBM Selectrics out there. Everything is shifting, and it's shifting quite quickly. And our issue is, can our personnel keep up with some of those type of changes? And again, I'm not trying to criticize anything, but it's delegate, as you have those conversations with what goes on with the law, positions might not necessarily be the solution. Pins might not be the answer, but competency certainly can be the answer. And when you get to the point of having some people that can be very dexterous, and then also utilizing technology in the way that it should be, just like we are here with these Zoom meetings. We didn't have this 24 months ago, but we're using it all the time now. There's no real answer for that. Just that's where you have 181 eyes and reading over bills when you look at both the House and the Senate. And people just have to think about what they're passing and what the unintended consequences are, or the intended consequences.
Okay. Would you recommend we have some of the department's opinions for these types of things? When we put a bill out there that's, let's say it has a high fiscal note within the state, are you asking that maybe we try to get the secretary's approval for something like that, the support or not support, that they can handle that? Is that something we should be questioning harder?
I can't, I guess I'm taking off my secretary's hat and going back to when I was a legislator and had all, you guys set the policies. The legislature sets the policy through statutory requirements of what has to happen. The executive branch is supposed to make implementations to have that take place, no matter who's at the top of the, that no matter who he or she might be in the governor's mansion. But you got to figure out what's proper and what's right to be done and to move forward. It's up to the executive to figure out how to go about it. And we do run into things where there's micromanagement. You did pass some bills last year that said you shall put in some pins. We had a budget hearing today on one such department. You shall put in 5 positions or 6 positions or some darn thing like that. But when you look inside the budget, the department had 182 vacant positions. They don't need positions. They need competent individuals to be able to do the job and the role. And it's not to say they don't already exist there. But creating a slot like that doesn't make it happen.
That's kind of where I was going with it. Just because we say we want it doesn't mean we can do it, and
That's
it makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Kittleman.
Madam Chair, let me interrupt you. I have 1 minute before I have to go over to meet.
Yes,
And I'll talk fast. I have a very specific question. When I came on the audit committee, one of the things I read was the 2018 audit of the Baltimore City Schools. Then I went back. They were previously audited in 2012 and also in 2006. And I read all of those. And each time the findings were massive. And in the most recent one, the findings indicate very specific dollar amounts that either weren't collected or were missing, a real impact, not just something that might cause the ability to do something wrong. And I wondered, do you also look at the school systems in the audits when they're that bad? And if you have, can you say something about Baltimore City?
I can tell you, we have not looked at any of the school system audits. And that is something I guess I can talk to Secretary Brinkley about, whether or not we want to start adding that to our, list of, what audits we're working with, as well as inviting them to our training sessions and that type of thing. That is something I can certainly discuss.
I would just suggest that since so much of our funds go to schools, and since we're spending billions of dollars trying to get the schools better, that the audit department has identified a number of issues that we really could, make use of their findings to do some things right now that could improve school systems.
Well, and before I go, let me just say, Delegate, you're right. There are some legitimate concerns there. Part of the audits with Baltimore City have been even hiring outside firms. All of the school systems hire outside firms that specialize in education budgets. So they're not technically a government entity, though they are paid for by either the counties, the city, or whomever. It would be in both of our interests. And when I say our, I mean the executive and the legislative branch. You're right, because of the investments that we put in public school systems, specifically Baltimore City, maybe to have some insight on it. But right now there's some mechanism, and I really don't know the statutory guidelines or what MSDE does, for those that are listening, Maryland State Department of Education, and how they govern the audits there, because they have their own specialty team. Because you're right, some of those needs are unique, and there is an opportunity here perhaps for us to cross-pollinate or whatever, your interests, you as legislators, our interest in terms of the executive branch. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I have to depart now and head across the street to the governor's mansion, or not to the mansion, to the State House. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You're in good hands with Joan. Joan, stay safe. You're doing well. I'm proud of you. All right.
Thank you, Secretary
Thank you, Ms.
Brinkley.
Secretary.
Very appreciate your presence.
We'll take care of her, Ms.
All
Secretary.
right. All right. I know where you live, Carol. I know. Pardon me, Delegate Grimm. I know. I know you're going to take care of her.
And thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. So I have one more question, and you may not have the answer for this, Joan. We've been reviewing Chapter 512, the Senate Chair and myself. And then there is a section in here that says that our legislative auditor can contract with a consultant. Do you know whether there is enough funding in his or her budget to do that? Because some of us have discussed the fact that perhaps we could send a consultant into an agency where there's repeat findings and of a serious nature. So could you comment on that?
I will say I do not know whether or not they're in the budget for the legislative auditors is, if there is that funding available. I would just probably have to defer to Greg to Hook to comment on that, because I'm not intimately familiar with their budget.
Could I then ask you to check on that when you go back to work? And
Absolutely.
Secretary, thank you. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Are there any more questions from the committee? Okay, thank you so much. Could you stay around maybe
Absolutely.
a little bit of time, because there could be some questions that are generated as a result of Secretary Badia's testimony. Okay.
Absolutely. We plan to be here through the duration. We're working with them. So it's in our best interest that they fix their findings. So again, we're trying to be very aggressive with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Secretary Padilla. It is It's your turn. You are up. Are you here?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So
Wonderful. Good afternoon, Chairman Lamb, Chairman Krim, and members of the Joint Audit Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to update the committee regarding the work completed since the previous hearing regarding the most recent audit. I have my team here today with me today. Gregory James, Deputy Secretary for Operations, Michelle L. Farr, Executive Director for the Social Service Administration, and Cope Hagapanos, CPA, Director of the Audit, Compliance, and Quality Improvement Unit, and he's in the back. You have my testimony, which I'm not going to repeat here. But before I speak to the audit, I would like to take a brief moment to update you on some recent improvements we have made at DHS in the area of child welfare. First, DHS recently launched a statewide CPS, Child Protective Service, and Adult Protective Service hotline. The goal is to make it easier for mandatory reporters and anyone else to make a report of child abuse or neglect. Rather than having different systems in each of the 24 jurisdictions, the hotline provides a single number for reporters to use and then be connected to the appropriate local department. This further enhances our ability to promptly receive and respond to reports of abuse and neglect. The hotline offers callers the option to select from 5 options: Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services, Child Services, Adult Services, and all other services. And calls are directed to the appropriate program areas. This reduces the number of non-Child Protective Services calls for screeners and frees the screeners to focus only on actual calls about abuse or neglect. The hotline allows screeners to transfer calls to other jurisdictions and to request supervisor assistance directly in the system. The hotline also allows the Social Service Administration Central and the local departments to collect real-time and historical information regarding the number of calls being received, the number of screeners available to answer the calls, and the number of calls in the queue, and wait times, which is very important as well. Another development that I would like to share is last Friday, DHS launched the new My Life website for youth and young adults in foster care and foster care alumni. I share with news with members of the committee. This is a tool designed for our youth in care, and with our youth in care, our foster youth had input on the design and consent every step of the way. This is an incentive hub for interactive hub for information, tools, and resources for youth involved with foster care on topics that the youth themselves told us was important to them. Education resources, including college enrollment, benefits for youth in foster care, healthcare, obtaining vital records, housing, employment, and job training opportunities. With My Life, we're proud to offer yet another way to help Maryland youth successfully transition from foster care to adulthood. Now, turning to the audit. Culture and accountability go hand in hand. We can absolutely do better. And I said that the last time I came to this committee in 2017 and told you that we're committed to remedying these findings, and we are on track to do so. Since then, we have successfully addressed several other findings from the prior audit. This reflects our commitment to resolving these issues. We continue to work with local department leadership while incorporating additional internal control oversight infrastructure, and performing one-on-one meetings. Since the last hearing, a number of corrective actions have been expeditiously implemented to address the administrative issues identified. The focus of this audit was on the oversight that SSA exercised over the delivery of services at the local level. Let me speak to some of the general improvements we have made that should have a positive impact on all finding areas. First, in August 2021, SSA created and staffed a new audit, compliance, and quality improvement unit, enhancing audit oversight and providing active, ongoing monitoring for critical activities. The audit unit is now staffed by auditors with experience in auditing DHS programs, including a CPA and a licensed social worker with DHS field experience. Experience is the key word here, very important that they know the subject matter that they are auditing. Second, DHS and SSA leadership implemented a process of regular comprehensive one-on-one meetings between SSA and each local department in September 21 and October to review performance in critical areas. Third, the quality assurance tool has been piloted with multiple jurisdictions, and the initial results have been shared with local departments. The tool will be implemented statewide by the end of the year. We will be using these results to guide our discussions and technical assistance with the local departments. In addition to our audited related activities, I wanted to share two other important steps DHS has taken to improve our child welfare system. I would like to speak to the specific audit findings and the actions we have taken. As you know, the audit had three general categories: general quality assurance process and monitoring, delivery of child protective service, and various fiscal issues. On quality assurance, which we're finding 1, 2, with respect to that, as we have previously discussed, proper documentation is essential for SSA monitoring compliance. Locals may be properly handling the case, but we need these activities to be entered and documented in the child, juvenile, adult management system that I will refer to CGMs for the Social Service Administration, and everyone in management to truly monitor and ensure the proper actions are being taken timely. SSA conducted case reviews using a randomly stratified sample from various counties to ensure legal documentation is uploaded into CGMs. We're using the standardized web-based tool to conduct these reviews. Currently, milestone reports are being refined and other tools are being developed to help monitor and ensure that children are receiving all their necessary medical, dental, and educational needs for healthy development, and that these activities are correctly documented in CGMs. Regarding the audit findings for child protective services, on the issue of timely initiation and closure of CPS cases, child protective cases, as of November 3rd, 94% of all CPS cases were closed timely on or before the 60-day deadline. This is the result of the one-on-one meetings with local departments, daily monitoring efforts, and guidance provided by SSA. The local departments share their internal practice for ensuring CPS cases are being closed by the 60-day mandate and barriers to closing timely during the one-on-one meetings held in September. As a result of what was learned, Social Service Administration, in collaboration with the Office of Attorney General, because we wanted the language correct, developed additional guidance for timely closure of cases while ensuring that the safety of children is maintained. This guidance was issued on October 12th. The audit unit is monitoring local performance weekly and providing reports to the local department related to this area. With regard to the timely assessment of substance-exposed newborns, information was provided to the local departments to access the children for safety and needed services when required. SSA follow up to ensure that this assessment were completed. What our reviews have indicated thus far is that for the most part, when our workers receive notification of a substance-exposed newborn case, they're making reasonable efforts to perform the required assessment within 48 hours as required by law. We're working with each local to be sure that this is always the case. There are circumstances when, despite best efforts, I can say, an assessment cannot be completed, being honest. For instance, when the parent and child cannot be located. But we keep trying and trying even after the 48 hours. I want to assure you that we continue to try. We also think that there is room to improve the hospital reporting process. So this assessment may be performed sooner, preferably before the parent and child are discharged from the hospital. I appreciate the willingness of members of this committee to facilitate discussions with hospitals and other partners, and look forward to working with you on this. I have also asked SSA to work with the MDThink team. MDThink team is the one developing the CGM system that I referred to identify ways we use technology to further improve this process. So what I'm looking hand in hand, the conversations with the hospital and the research that SSA and the MDThink is doing to further enhance that process. As for timely assessment under the determination of parental rights birth march, as we refer to, SSA has enhanced its practices to ensure that when required, children born to parents whose rights were terminated in a prior case are referred to locals for assessment consistently and expeditiously. During the prior audit period, there have been a breakdown in our process for getting the birth march information to our local departments. We have corrected this, and our SSA audit unit will be monitoring this activity going forward. Routine follow-ups for all audit points occur between SSA and local departments as part of the monitoring process. The timelessness of both SENS and birth march assessment will be aggressively monitored by the SSA audit team going forward. With regard to the proper determination of 4E, first, it is important to note that the audit findings in this area predate the deployment of the new CGM system. This 4E implementation process is now automated with various checks and controls. SSA is conducting a one-time 100% look-back review of Title 4E cases since July 2016 to identify any necessary payment adjustment. 60% of the cases have already been reviewed, approximately 2,400 foster care cases and 1,672, which is 30% of the adoption subsidy cases, and the expected completion date remains June 22, as we stated in our audit response. At this time, there are no cases found to have been incorrectly determined ineligible that require a corrective 4E determination resulting in the need to complete a retroactive adjustment claim for federal reimbursement. With regard to provider overpayments, we're reviewing the cited payments and pursuing collection where appropriate. Provided overpayments control schedule for fiscal year 17, 18, and 19 track notices, demands and collection for SSA and details are entered as performed. SSA standard operations procedures for provider payments has been approved and placed in operation with SSA, budget and finance, and OIG. Additionally, DHS SSA created monthly reports to monitor and review payments made through to collection. In the regards to adoption subsidies, to prevent the payment of adoption subsidy when an adopted youth re-enter foster care, in September 21, SSA and the MD Think team implemented a flag. This is very important. Implemented a flag with insignias in the new technology that automatically suspends adoption subsidy payments upon a child's re-entry into foster care. This CDM's innovation ensures that future payments involving state-funded adoption subsidies are appropriately suspended. The audit also highlighted concerns with the department's interagency agreements. As noted at our last hearing, a number of activities have been completed to ensure that SSA is able to effectively monitor interagency agreements and approve invoices. SSA is instituting an extra review cycle, though. This is a strategy previously introduced by the DHS Child Support Administration, which has been successful and has been accepted by OLA. Thank you again for the opportunity to present here today, and want to assure this legislative body of the department's dedication to the safety and well-being of children, which has only been enhanced by the monitoring practices presented today. We appreciate the audit as an opportunity to identify areas for growth, improvement, and collaboration. I can say that with over 35 years of commitment to the human services field and current oversight of over 6,000 staff throughout our 24 jurisdictions, and over 1 million vulnerable Marylanders we serve annually, I remain actively vigilant to the fact that accountability and responsibility go hand in hand. Committee, when I accepted this position, my confirmation hearing, I said to my children, as of today, I have adopted 4,000 plus children. They become your sibling. I take that very seriously, the work that we are responsible for. I will be happy to address any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that comprehensive report. I want the committee members to know that I have met one-on-one with the Secretary and her staff. She has offered to do that for any legislator. So if you have follow-up questions that maybe you feel you don't want to address here today, but still want to talk to the Secretary, please reach out to her and get your questions answered. So, Madam Secretary, for me, if there's one child that is not getting assessed, one baby, one newborn baby that is going home with parents who have had their parental rights taken away or are addicted parents, then that's one too many. So I know that you've made progress here, but how can we get down to no baby going home from the hospital without these proper assessments being done? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to elaborate on that. I too agree with you that the safety of that newborn is critical and very much important. So I truly believe that through the one-on-one meetings and the process that we have put into place, where we're holding the local DSS accountable in completing that assessment with the time frame that the law requires. And in addition to that, the conversations that we are going to have to enhance the process between the hospital notification and our agency responsiveness, that we're going to get to that common goal, because it is a common goal that you, the committee, and I have.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Chairman Lamb, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. And I appreciate Madam Secretary coming back up before the committee to bring these responses back to us. I did have a question on, it sounds as though this new ACQI, or the Audit Compliance and Quality Improvement Unit, is new, that this is going to be a new office that you are instituting within DHS to help address some of the shortcomings that we have found earlier. I do want to get your sense and your commitment as the leader of the agency to understand and make sure that ACQI as a unit has the support and backing of you and the senior management team there at DHS to address the non-compliant issues that we have found. That these are obviously, as you've heard from the committee, very serious, and we are deeply concerned, particularly when it comes to the welfare of children, of the findings that came forward from the prior audit report that we had earlier this year. But what is your and your senior management team's commitment to ACQI? Because a lot of these, as we mentioned, were repeat findings. This is not the first time that we're seeing them.
Thank you. As I have always said, the head of the agency sets the tone for the agency, right? So I heard loud and clear that we needed a separate unit to focus on audit compliance. And that I took very seriously. Some of the things that we found in the past, and it was confirmed today when I heard DBM's testimony, that at times an agency comes up with a corrective action plan, writes it up, and then gives it to an already overwhelmed worker to follow up on, right? And that makes it very difficult. That's why we went with this different approach to implement a unit whose only focus is quality control, making sure that not only what we said in the audit were responsive to the audit findings, but anything else that through that process is identified as needed enhancement. This unit, that's their primary responsibility. They have no other assignments, and they will continue to have my full support and my leadership support to make sure that we stay on task. I don't want them doing anything else. The other thing that was very important to me is that the people that we assign in that unit knew the program, right? They knew auditing, but they also were familiar with Maryland laws, with Maryland statute. So that's why we have someone that I introduced today, Mr. Cole Tagpanos, that has that experience. He is very familiar with Maryland law. So there is no learning curve here. He already knows what he's looking for. I want him to remain very focused on this, and I can assure this committee that that's what we will continue to do in the Department of Human Services.
Can you tell us, since the staffing issues come up obviously in this meeting. How many people you envision would serve in this ACQI unit? And
How many people?
currently have been assigned? How many personnel have been assigned to this unit?
How many workers do we have in CGI?
We have 3. We have our director, we have our manager, and we have our policy and the analyst. And our manager also has a background in auditing, and our policy analyst has a background in child protective services and other services related to CPS, child protective services. So there's a lot of experience that we have currently engaged in the process, and I want to publicly thank the Secretary for her steadfast commitment to bringing this audit unit to fruition with a level of expeditious commitment.
And I would like to add that while we had 3 today, if they were to come to me and say, Secretary Padilla, we need more than 3 to fully do what we need, we would identify additional positions if needed.
Okay. And then the last question, and I'll turn it back to Chairperson Krim. I think there is interest among some members of the committee to also ensure through, exploring legislative action, compliance with these findings as well. I think the ACQI unit is a good first step, but there seems to be a long history here with this agency of, repeat findings that do put in jeopardy sometimes the health and welfare of children throughout the state, many of whom are in need. And so while we appreciate that, I think there is a desire among some to also look at measures to be able to ensure that ACQI and the entire department and agency are following up with these concerns. And I assume that you would be open to having the ACQI unit work with whatever provisions might be implemented, as well as continuing to work with OLA staff to address these findings to make sure that they do not come up in a future audit again. Is that correct?
I can say that ACQI is not the only measure that we are implementing to address the audit findings. The combination of their findings, the combination of policy clarification, plus training would identify anything else that we would need to continue to assure the children's safety. I do agree with you, their safety is the priority. I will need to know what the legislation is, if that's what we are referring to. We will need to have a conversation, and after more research and analysis is done, then we can come up with a consensus whether it's truly needed or not. I truly believe that with the one-on-ones that we're having with the directors, really listening to what their needs are and holding them accountable. This, my director and the deputy are meeting with them and going over reports, which we were not doing before. So reports closely monitor and asking them what is keeping you from meeting the mark, I believe will go a long way and to get to where we need to be at. But it's going to be, I want you to all understand that it's been, I would say maybe 2 months, right? And we have seen some positive results, but this is going to be an ongoing effort. It's not an effort that is going to go away 1 or 2 months or because we have this audit. This is an ongoing effort that is now part of the DNA of DHS and SSA.
Well, thank you for that. We, again, appreciate your willingness to set this up and to respond to the concerns that have been brought forward. I think given the history here, it would probably not be surprising that, we want to, at least a few of us want to take a trust but verify kind of approach to things. And so that's what we were potentially looking at during the session. So back to you, Chairperson Krim.
Thank you, Chair Lamb. Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I just want to, as always, thank our Office of Legislative Audits. I think we are really blessed with talented, hardworking, and detail-focused auditors. And I also want to thank Secretary Brinkley and Ms. Peacock for your presentations. Like Delegate Cram, I also had a pre-meeting Zoom meeting with Secretary Padilla and her team, and I thought that was tactical, smart, courteous, and helpful. But I actually, Chair Krim, am going to disagree with you. I think that we should not be taking questions offline. This is a public hearing that the public can watch the status of government functioning and the use of taxpayer fundings. The fact that, as Senator Lamb said, that these are repeat findings that frustrate us all a lot, I think make this important that we not then follow up privately and take our concerns privately. I really encourage us all to try to voice our concerns today here. And I really want to thank both chairs for your leadership on these issues and expressing these concerns. As I shared with Secretary Padilla last week, I have a dear friend who took in 4 foster girls, and I have just seen the challenges and that she and they have faced over the years. There's not a lot of room for error on these issues. And so I think we really need to be stepping up and making sure that things go right. The last thing I will say, which is just sort of plopping something in, Senator Lamb mentioned legislation. I also am sure that we're all cognizant that we've got a year plus, a year and a few months before there's going to be a transition in, let's say, most departments, if not all departments. And whether our next governor is a Democrat or a Republican, we're going to likely have some new leadership in each department and agency. And so I hope that there is some cognitive awareness of that, so that there's preparation, solve the problems that exist now, so whomever is elected to be our next governor doesn't inherit some of the challenges that have been lurking for years. With that, I thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Senator. I will tell you one thing that did come up with my meeting with the Secretary was that she sought out help from the legislature on notifications. Now, I'm not sure that would have come up here, but I asked her, how can we help you? Because our goal is to ensure that these children are being assessed before they go home. And I'm talking about the vulnerable children born to parents whose parental rights have been taken away. So she did ask for our assistance on notification. And I think she brought that up here today. And I think that's something that we as legislators, when we are dealing with our hospitals, that we could ask, say, this is something you can help us with, and help the department get those names to the local department so those assessments can be done. And sometimes that takes a while. We all know, babies are born, they're out of the hospital within a couple days. And I think that if we can push that notification to happen quicker at the local level, I think we can help the department achieve a success rate of 100%. That's what I'm looking for, 100%. No baby goes home without the proper assessment. So, and I think the Secretary wants to get there also. I mean, I believe that. So, I'm going to try working on that, call my local hospital president and see whether we can do something locally to assist. Delegate Ahrens, did you have a question? I didn't see your hand. No.
Yes, ma'am. I do have a question, but it's not based on this audit. It goes back to Ms. Peacock, if that's okay.
That's fine.
And again, I do appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the comments you all made. But one of the biggest concerns I have with some of the audits that we do is I do have constituents that actually watch these hearings, and they are important. And when we see some things, we just listened to Secretary Padilla. This is a great organization that we're working with. They're doing really good work. And sometimes we have people on these audits that aren't doing really good work. And this has nothing to do with this audit. It's some people that have done some nefarious things as far as with our state contracts and what have you. And I'm being asked questions. Well, that's great that you bring it to our attention, but what is happening with that? There's really no accountability being shown to the public of how we're addressing those types of issues. And I mean, and I'm not, like I said, most of these things are human error that we deal with on this, that we're working through it and the process is there. But when we have malfeasance and stuff, I just wonder, is there something we could be doing better on that? Or do you have any suggestions?
So I don't know if I have any suggestions on that. I know what for those particular topics, or when those issues are identified, those are the things that we actually do bring to our internal auditor forum, and we discuss with our chief internal auditors at our roundtables. Those fraud and misconduct issues that are identified and disclosed. Those are definitely hot topics. I mean, I can tell you, my staff and we jump on that and we bring that directly to our audit units. And again, part of the reason we also try to include representatives from agencies that don't have internal audit units, because we want to make sure we're reaching out to all the agencies. And what we try to do is identify, this is what happened in this agency. We would, kind of with the idea of take a look in your agency, make sure this is not happening. Here's things that you can be looking for. Here's things to that be red flags that should identify that. And when that happens, let's follow up. And I mean, I will tell you, after we do that, we have those discussions, or we do training at an internal auditor forum, I'll get questions. I'll get calls from agency audit offices and some chief financial officers, and they're asking questions. I know they're following up and looking into that. So I do know that's happening. And again, that to me, that's trying to be more proactive and making sure that, when we know something's happened in one agency, it might be happening in another. Let's take a look.
I guess I get that, except that my only issue is somebody saying this person did. I'm not looking for the name of the person saying Joe Bonucci or so-and-so was bad. Yeah. It's just that somebody say, well, what happened to those people? Where are those people? And what are the agencies doing? And we had one where we had a little bit of an investigative thing. Maybe something in our audit would be good to sit back and say, we've looked at these things and the Attorney General's office is involved and we're pursuing it. We're just not talking about those things here. We're talking about the findings, and I appreciate it because I do know your job's difficult. But I get questions, and it's sometimes frustrating to sit back and go, I don't know. And then we don't have a way of even following up generically.
Right. I guess to your point, you're right. Actually, I think this was something that actually we were just talking during one of our last chief internal auditor roundtables about when we have those issues, identifying and reporting them to the Attorney General's office, to the state's attorney for follow-up and for action being taken. And you're right, currently there is no reporting of what steps or what did happen. Mm-hmm. I think the only thing that I'm aware of is I know if something has been identified in an audit, when legislative auditors come back for their next fiscal compliance audit, whether it was a performance audit, a special audit, or the regular audit, they do ask the agency and follow up and ask what happened. Unless there's another finding related to that same issue, they won't report in their audit what happened. But yeah, I unfortunately I can't pinpoint, and I can't tell you there is nothing right now that provides that reporting status. And I'm sure I understand how your constituents are concerned.
Okay. All right. It's something I think we need to provide for the people because they are seeing these things. And when you suggest something, and again, I'm a state employee, when you suggest it, sometimes people feel like you're going after the state employees, and that's not the case at all. We have some tremendously good people, but we
Absolutely.
Also have some people that are doing some things wrong. Just as in my case, if I would do something wrong out in the street, I'm called to task, and I'm I'm reprimanded, and we're not seeing that. And these are significant dollars we're dealing with. These are not minor dollars. So, but I do appreciate your input. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
One more thing, Joan, could you provide us with an update? I know that Chairman Lamb said we should verify. We should trust but verify. Could your office provide the committee with a follow-up on how this progress is continuing? We haven't reached 100% yet, and I know that we're all working towards that goal. So could you provide us an update, say, in the next couple months? So Chair Lamb, do you have a suggestion on the time frame for something like that?
I would suggest either right before session or maybe right after session, because I know we'll probably be tied up during those 90 days.
Right. How about right before session? So if it's something that we need to address during session, we would have that opportunity. Okay.
I would be happy to. I do also want to, and I can follow up back with you. I do want to point out that I believe because this was an unsatisfactory audit that legislative auditors will be coming back to do a follow-up. I don't know the exact timing of, I believe they should be coming back in December. And I don't know the exact timing of when their report related to that will be issued. But I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing their assessment as well. I am happy to also, provide you an update sometime in January, early January, I would guess, before session.
I have no desire to duplicate work. Yeah.
So maybe I'll touch base with Greg Hook and then get back to you guys and find out what you guys want. And we could always have them give their, follow-up report, and then we can follow up 2 months after that and give you an update.
All right. All right.
We're with them till the end. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Does any other committee member have anything to add? Okay. Mr. Hook, are you on the line? Did you want to provide a comment? We do have a little bit of extra time here. No. Josh, do you have anything you want to say? No.
No, delegate. But I mean, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm here. I can't get my camera to work. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
And of course, with my camera not working, no one's really missing anything. The symbol looks better than I do. Just a question for Joan. We will be doing a follow-up because it's an unsatisfactory audit report. But the report you would like from Joan, is it just SSA or is it the general follow-up work which he's done with various agencies over the past year or two? Which did you have in mind?
Well, I was thinking about SSA, but I would like her to include everything because this was my next thing, Joan. I wasn't going to talk about this today, but at our next thing, I was going to say that we should have a report from you every year, for you to come in every year and say, this is what you did. These were the findings. This is how we worked with the agency. These are the outcomes. And that's what I'm going to suggest, that the committee does that every year, because I think you do a lot of good work and we need to know what you're doing.
Okay, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to I'm proud of my staff and the work we do. And I'm proud of, I want to say this carefully, but I know currently the agencies we're working with are very dedicated to correcting the audit findings and putting in corrective actions. And when the agencies are making that effort and working with us and cooperating and taking our suggestions and recommendations, I'm very proud of that work that they do. And I think it does result in success for them if we're looking at whether or not they have repeat findings and have corrected their findings in the next audit. So I'd be definitely happy to come and share with the committee the work that we're doing and the status of that. So for, just to make sure I understand, so for, would you like something before the session with work we've done the past year for
That
with
would be,
agencies?
that would be great if you could get that together.
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
Sorry to make more work for you, Joan.
Thanks, Greg.
But as long as I can pass the work on to you instead of me, I'm all for it. And can I ask another question? You had that slide about the reasons why repeat findings occur. Going forward, could you kind of maybe try to identify when a repeat occurs? What is the cause for the repeat? I mean, we can try doing that ourselves, but it might be helpful to get your assessment too as to which one of those conditions may be resulted or primary focus of the repeat. I'm just
Right.
throwing that
No,
out.
and Greg, I will say that that is something that, I briefly mentioned, but, but like my team and I were just discussing, that is maybe something that we should, when we're working with the agency, take a look at that and then make that identification. And then, if we can identify a systemic problem or issue with why repeats are occurring, maybe we can come up with a creative way to combat that. I think that's a great idea. And I'll be honest, it's something that we really haven't focused on because we've been so focused on implementing the corrective action, making sure that's timely, making sure it's effective, and not try to look backwards. But it might be, something to start doing going forward. Yes.
Yeah, I think given the line of questioning from the committee, and I know Senator Lamb was asking those questions of the secretary, that might be very helpful for the committee.
Yes, I
going
agree.
forward if they try to find ways to help you and the executive branch fix the problems going forward. Sorry, I didn't mean to butt in. Apologies.
No, I asked you to butt in, as you recall. So, Senator Eckert, she is raising her hand. You're muted, Addie. There
Yeah,
you go.
you can't hear me if I raise my hand and I don't unmute myself. I've been fascinated by this because to me there are a number of collaborative collective actions, Joan, that I think you're gonna pull together just because we've seen this pattern of repeat findings for years, and whether it's staff, whether it's systems within the organization. And we know it's not the people, we know it's the systems when you really start drilling down in it. So where those deficiencies are, and then how we can all work together to remedy those, I think would be important. And you may begin to develop a series of interventions that will be able to match what the organization needs. The other piece of this is that, as Delegate Ernst was talking about, it's really important that the public knows what's happening and how it's being resolved. But I think it's also important for the agency to know that we're concerned and we want to help that system improve. And so if you're able to go back to them and say, that you will be working with the legislative branch in addition to the executive branch of government to be able to identify the deficiencies and then develop the corrective action, I think brings a very collaborative effort that may be helpful from all perspectives. So thank you for your good work. Thank you, chairs, in this discussion. It's a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as you can see, this committee is very committed to improving our having less repeat findings. That's our mindset here. And, we want to put processes in place that will do that. And, we're just not here to hear audits and go home and then wait for the next audit. We want to do something positive, proactive. And, we've heard from a lot of our committee members who are on the same page with that. So let's see what your report looks like for us coming up. And I look forward to it, to tell you the truth. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, committee. Look out for emails from Elizabeth Allison. She will tell you when our next meeting is. Elizabeth, do you want to say anything about our next meeting?
The next meeting is scheduled for December 1st at 1 p.m. and look out for information from me with details. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Lamb, you have any closing remarks?
Just briefly, thank you, Chairperson Krim. And I want to thank again Ms. Peacock for being here before the committee. And I don't know how often you come before this committee, but I think the work that you and your office do are really important. And I think to Delegate Krim's point, we've seen, I think even just last year from the numbers that OLA presented to us, over 150 repeat findings. And, I am concerned that it's a stretch for your 3-person office plus administrative assistant to try to cover a lot of those repeat findings. And so, looking back at the statute, it does identify that this office was intended to have 10. It doesn't look like that was ever the case. But with some of the numbers of repeat findings creeping back up, I think that's something we'd like to take a closer look at as well. So again, thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's important work. And I'm sure, given your staff, you're working tirelessly to try to follow up on all these repeat findings. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We are glad, and it's our pleasure to serve. And we definitely do I'm lucky and blessed to have the staff that I do. They are very hard workers, and might be small, but I think we do accomplish a lot.
Okay, well, thank you again for being here. I think you've seen how much we appreciate your work, and we want to hear more from you. Secretary Padilla, thank you and your staff for being here today. We appreciate the update and continuing to work with you. And Secretary Brinkley, I see your box, but I know you're not there. But if his staff is there, please tell him that we appreciate him attending also. So that's it for today. Have a good rest of the day.